Welcome to the Clothed in Glory campaign, where we hold gender justice conversations. This is one of 7 episodes that are available on YouTube. You can find the rest of the videos in our playlist under Clothed in Glory.
Now we will hear from our speaker. It is my great privilege to be able to partner with her to bring you these presentation that will be very interactive. You can read here a little bit more about Reverend Ramelia Williams.
Thank you so much, Paola. I am so grateful and so honored for this opportunity to be with you and to serve this group of people who are coming to hear and to learn about what it is that they can do to activate and to mobilize in their own communities in this Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I say welcome and thank you to all of you for the work that you do, work that can be vicariously traumatic to those that do the work. And so to you, I say thank you and God bless you and God continue to give you healing and peace as you do this work in your own communities. My name is Ramelia. I serve as the Director of Ministry Initiatives for Evangelical Covenant Church. And one of the initiatives that I run is called Advocacy for Victims of Abuse. And Advocacy for Victims of Abuse was really started to aid our pastors and our church leaders in learning more about domestic violence and how it impacts the spirituality of those that sit in the pews. And as Paola named the statistics, you see and you hear and understand that this is a really prevalent issue that affects those in our congregation. So if you look at those numbers, 1 in 5, if you looked at your congregation or those in your community and counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and go on down the row, you will see how pervasive and impactful this issue really is. And so Advocacy for Victims of Abuse was created to help our pastors and our leaders to begin to understand what is it that I can do to create awareness in my own congregation. What is it that I can do to also not further harm those who have been abused as they sit in our congregations. And so one of the ways, as Paola talked about what to bring to you, 3 ways that we want to help lift up Domestic Violence Awareness Month is in an individual way, a communal way, and then a way of advocacy. And so the first way that I want to present to you is this newly launched Advocacy for Victims of Abuse online training that is now available. I will also name that my illustrious intern who really spearheaded creating this and updating this online training is present with us today. So Bobby Joe Barclay, you could say hello, good to see you. So I'll share my screen here and just kind of run through one of the modules. This is the website where you can find a couple of the resources that I will share today. But this online training is one of the resources that you can click there. This resource is available in both English and Spanish, which we're excited that we were able to do a dual launch of this particular resource. So this training has 11 lessons. It's really designed for any leader in a congregation or in a community that wants to learn more about domestic violence, intimate partner violence, childhood abuse, childhood sexual assault. So these things that would affect those who are in our congregations. This training is it's designed as a one-time instruction, but you can also use it as a reference for future use. So let's just start with the first lesson here. So in this particular lesson, we're going to understand the prevalence of intimate partner violence, or IPV as we call it, to understand what it is, what causes it, identify some forms, and to clarify some myths about domestic violence. And I'll just kind of scroll through some of these. So we start off with some facts. Paola named some of these facts. Intimate partner violence affects more than 12 million people every year. Only 34% of people who are injured by intimate partner violence actually receive medical care for their injuries. And women ages 18 to 24 are at the greatest risk of experiencing intimate partner violence. What exactly is IPV? It's patterns of behavior, including control, isolation, threats, violence. It also includes controlling behaviors, emotional abuse, forced sexual contact, social isolation, the abuse of a victim's animals or pets. Forms of abuse, it also goes through the different types of abuse. So an emotional abuse, that would be something like extreme jealousy, isolation, withholding affection, again, harming a person's pets, excessive texting to check in. Verbal abuse might look like insults, name calling, yelling and screaming, constant criticism. Sexual abuse, any unwanted sexual contact. Financial abuse, keeping control over the expenditures of the household, denying access to money or account information. And then spiritual abuse, and of course, physical abuse, shoving, slapping, scratching, pulling. And then this is kind of a new one for us in this age, digital and dating abuse. So using technology such as texting and social media to bully, harass, stalk, or intimidate a partner. And so we move through some of the various forms of abuse so that there's knowledge and understanding. And then I'll just name a couple of these myths and facts. Intimate partner violence is a private family matter. That is a myth. IPV is a public matter. No act that can leave a person permanently injured physically or mentally or result in their death is a family matter. IPV is a crime. Marital rape is also a crime. Arguing that the privacy of the family must be maintained can result in injury, death, or virtual imprisonment for many men and women. Intimate partner violence only impacts the victim. IPV impacts the children, family, and friends of a victim. Children who witness violence are deeply wounded just as the victim is. Family and friends experience wounds as they wrestle with guilt or shame for not being able to help sooner or from being separated from the victim. And so it continues through some myths and facts. And then once you move through the lesson, it then has a little exam for you to take to just measure your comprehension of the information that you just read. At the end, like I named, you would receive a certificate. And then each lesson also has links and resources that are available if you wanted to further your study on any of the particular items that were named in this particular lesson. And then you move on from there to the next lesson. And so this is a resource as we think about how can we individually do something about this issue. Then this is a way, again, that you can individually impact this particular issue of intimate partner violence, child abuse, domestic violence, etc. And now I will share my screen and move into the second piece. And this second piece will be more of a community way of involving the community in your goal of advocacy and resolving intimate partner violence in our lifetime. Many times we find that in our congregations and communities, we don't talk about intimate partner violence, domestic violence, because we don't know what to say. We don't know how to approach it. Another resource that is available at the link that was dropped in your box is a curriculum that we wrote. It's entitled Sexual Violence Uncovered. And this particular resource looks at a number of texts of terror in the Bible, not all of them, but we just chose 4 of them. And we use those to then give us a deeper understanding of how do we intertwine faith and what our theology has to say about abuse with how we live our lives of spirituality in today's world. And so I'll share my screen, and we will move through the first lesson of this particular resource. So Sexual Violence Uncovered, a community issue, is the first resource in this particular, the first session in this resource. And you can actually use this QR code to download the resource, or the resource is available, again, like I said, at the link that you were just given. I do always like to name, as we talk about these type of issues, that if this content triggers any emotional memories for you, we want you to feel free to step away or to move away if anything that is said or any conversation that is happening might trigger you. Triggering might mean that you have some emotional response in your body that is unrecognized or unfamiliar to you. You may feel a sense of anger or angst or sadness, or tears might come with things that you are hearing being discussed, and we call that being triggered for some emotions that may be repressed around some violence that you may have experienced yourself. So we want to take care of ourselves and just give you permission to take care of yourself if that happens in these moments. So I want to start with the Bible passage that we use for this first lesson. Just to give you an overview, each of these lessons will include activities, questions for reflections, a particular Bible verse or verses that it focuses on, and then it also moves into our current context. So what are some real life examples of sexual violence as it relates to the particular text that we will read? And then there's a Bible study that is included as well that you can read to further involve your community in discussion. And so this particular workshop will be interactive, and so it will be really helpful if you can use your voice to answer questions and to be involved in the conversation. And this is a model of what this would be like for you to do it in community. So I'll start out by reading our passage. I'll be reading 2 Samuel chapter 13, verses 1 through 22. 2 Samuel 13, 1 through 22. In the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. Amnon became so obsessed with his sister Tamar that he made himself ill. She was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. Now Amnon had an advisor named Jonadab, son of Shemaiah, David's brother. Jonadab was a very shrewd man. He asked Amnon, "Why do you, the king's son, look so haggard morning after morning? Won't you tell me?" Amnon said to him, "I'm in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." "Go to bed and pretend to be ill," Jonadab said. "When your father comes to see you, say to him, 'I would like my sister Tamar to come and give me something to eat. Let her prepare the food in my sight so I may watch her and then eat it from her hand.'" So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. When the king came to see him, Amnon said to him, "I would like my sister Tamar to come and make some special bread in my sight so I may eat from her hand." David sent word to Tamar at the palace, "Go to the house of your brother Amnon and prepare some food for him." So Tamar went to the house of her brother Amnon, who was lying down. She took some dough, kneaded it, made the bread in his sight, and baked it. Then she took the pan and served him the bread, but he refused to eat. "Send everyone out of here," Amnon said. So everyone left him. Then Amnon said to Tamar, "Bring the food here into my bedroom so I may eat from your hand." And Tamar took the bread she had prepared and brought it to her brother Amnon in his bedroom. But when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her and said, "Come to bed with me, my sister." "No, my brother," she said to him, "don't force me. Such a thing should not be done in Israel. Don't do this wicked thing." "What about me? Where could I get rid of my disgrace? And what about you? You would be like one of the wicked fools in Israel. Please speak to the king. He will not keep me from being married to you." But he refused to listen to her, and since he was stronger than her, he raped her. Then Amnon hated her with intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than he had loved her. Amnon said to her, "Get up and get out." "No," she said to him, "sending me away would be a greater wrong than what you have already done to me." But he refused to listen to her. He called to his personal servant and said, "Get this woman out of my sight and bolt the door after her." So his servant put her out and bolted the door after her. She was wearing an ornate robe, for this was the kind of garment the virgin daughters of the king wore. Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the ornate robe she was wearing. She put her hands on her head and went away, weeping aloud as she went. Her brother Absalom said to her, "Has that Amnon, your brother, been with you?" "Be quiet for now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart." And Amnon lived in her brother Absalom's house, a desolate woman. When King David heard all of this, he was furious. And Absalom never said a word to Amnon, either good or bad. He hated Amnon because he had disgraced his sister Tamar. Even this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. What are some of the reverberating effects of this incidence of sexual violence in David's family?
I'm struck by how much silence there is, and how much sort of family pressure there is to just for everyone to be quiet and not talk about it or address it. And that's really kind of sitting hard with me right now.
Yes, the silence. Thank you. That's a great one.
I think one of the things that stands out to me is that the victim is the one that has to bear the burden of the assault. She's the one that's shamed for this act that was forced upon her.
So good. Thank you for that. The shame is placed on the shoulders of the victim. Thank you. What else?
The perpetrator is not held accountable for his actions.
Absolutely no accountability because of his influence. And he would have been the first, the eldest son of David. And so he would have been the one that was set in the place to be the next king. And so there was a privilege and a power that he held, and there was no accountability. Thank you. Something else I noticed in this text is the father, the one with the ultimate privilege and power, is also silent. And so the voice of the one that could have brought some type of redemption is silent and doesn't speak. And the other piece in this story that I like to highlight is, and this comes later in the text, but this reality that there's a bitterness that develops between the brothers. And because it's unresolved, it then continues this cycle of violence. And then there's physical violence and ultimately death that happens because of this violence that was unresolved in the family. And now I'll move forward and read the Bible study that is attached to this lesson. And if you have downloaded it, again, you can see it from the download, but it is also, you would be able to use this QR code. So how do these biblical concepts influence your own personal perspective on whether sexual violence is an individual or a communal issue? And so really, I want maybe one or two voices to just speak to, do you believe sexual violence is an individual issue or is it a communal issue?
Absolutely a communal issue, societal issue.
Anyone else? And if you could speak to why you believe that is.
It affects the whole family of God. The whole family.
Absolutely. And the last piece, I'll end with this. This is a short video that really speaks to how this is a societal issue. And this video reflects how the silence is can happen at a family level, but also silencing victims happen at more systemic levels as well. As we can see, this is just one example of how silencing victims and power and control really factor into this reality that sexual violence is not an individual issue, but it really is a communal issue. It's not an issue where that's something that's happening within that family and just affecting that small group of people. But this really shows that systemically, even the silencing of victims happen. And this is the result in a real life example.
Yes, thank you so much, Ramelia. And thank you for sharing with us some of these resources and giving us an example of what we can do. You're clergy who preaches, you can really preach a sermon against domestic and sexual violence, like on the text that Ramelia talked to us about. And if you're wondering, how do I do that? Where do I start? Sojourners has a collection of 100 sermons against domestic and sexual violence that you can look through, read, listen to give an idea, and then preach one in your own community.
Thanks for watching one of the 7 episodes of Clothed in Glory. And don't forget to subscribe to support SojoAction's work and see more content.